Hi guys, welcome to Digital TechJoint. I hope everybody is doing good and thanks for visiting our channel. Now in this video tutorial, I'm going to cover how do you secure your web API by implementing JWT token. Now related to web API, I've already released and uploaded few videos and I've created a playlist called Learn Web API where I have released almost 3 videos. The first video where I covered how to develop a web API in ASP.NET in 60 minutes, and it's a complete tutorial. Then second video I had shown you how to consume the developed web API in video 1 in ASP.NET MVC application. So how to consume that. And in my third video I had covered some of the best practices on consuming the web API in your ASP.NET MVC application. Now in the fourth I am going to secure the web API that I created in the video 1. So here is the project. Now before you start, this is this project that I created a demo API which is a project of web API where we have the web API endpoints, and this is the ASP.NET MVC application where using the web API that I'm consuming, I'm actually created a complete CRUD application. So I'll just show that. I'll just run this project. So this is my Swagger API where I have API endpoints for getting the list of students and getting students by the ID, adding new students, update student details, and delete student. And this is my ASP.NET MVC application where if you click on students, the API gets called and you can see 2 records over here. You can view the API details, update it and submit it, and also click on the delete. That will delete the record. So all this functionality of this current student is happening through this API that I created over here. I'll also show you the fetch API, that is a API students API, and I'll just click on that and execute it, and you can see the records are displayed over here. Fine. So this is a project that we had created, and I strongly recommend someone who's just visiting this video tutorial for the first time to go ahead and watch the previous videos so that they had better understanding. And for someone who could just simply like to know how to implement a JWT token in web API, then this is the right video for you. Now this is a API project. What I'm going to do is that set this project as a startup project. So I'll click on the demo API and set as a startup project. So once I'm done, what I'm going to do is that first to secure this API, what I will do is I'll create a user. So for me, I'll create one user called admin. But let me just create a class. Let me create a table. Now in our database we have only one table called students, which has all your student information. Here you can see. So here I'm going to create one more table called local users, and those table will have users. As of now we'll create only one user as an admin, and basis user role we are going to generate the JWT token and configure our project to authenticate the API request or endpoints using a valid token. Otherwise it will reject the request. So let's go ahead, right click on the model and add a new class called local user. I'll add some properties over here. So I've created the following properties for the local user, that is ID, the ID of the user, user name required for login, the name of the user, password, and the role. Role can be admin or customer, or it can be anyone who an employee. So the role is defined away. Role is important because in my further videos I'll show you how do certain endpoints will have certain roles. For example, deleting any student details can be done only by the user having the role of an admin. So even that can be controlled, and how to do that, even that will be covered in this tutorial. So once we have this property, let's go ahead to our application DB context class that is there in a folder data, application DB context, and here I'm going to create one more data set, and that will be public DB set, and this will be local user, that is a class, and I'll just call this table. So name of the table that I'm going to keep is local users, and this is it. So once I do this two things, I'll go and open the tool, package manager console, I'll just increase the size, and here I'm going to select demo API, and I'm going to say add migration, and I'm going to say add user table. So I just added this build. The build is successful. Now I'm just going to update the database now. Update -database, and this should create the table in the database. Now you can see, I'll just refresh these tables, and here you can see the local users is added. So what I'm going to do is that I'm not going to add one more class right now to add users to this table. I'll simply add one record over here, and let me call this username as admin, and name will be Robert, and password will be admin, and the role will be as admin. So remember this is one user that I've added directly in the database. Now basis this record, I'm going to create a JWT token that will be used to authenticate the endpoint. Now in the further videos, we can also create one more class as user registration, and that class will actually be implemented in the controller to add new records from our front-end application, that is the school management. For as of now, we are only focusing on securing the web API. That is why I had created one user table and added the record directly over here. Now once the user is added, let's go ahead and add a controller called user controller. So this will be my web API controller. So I right click on the controller and I say add new controller. So this is a controller over here. Select web API, and this will be my API. So I'll just select an empty API, and I'm going to call it as users. Okay, so this is my API that is created. So the functionality that we are going to write over is login. So what we are going to do is that we are going to authenticate this particular user. So we are going to create a routine called login. So once a user enters a proper username and password, we will authenticate the user and then generate a JWT token over here and return that to the calling function. That will be ideally the school management, because we are going to further create a login page over here in our project, MVC project, which will authenticate the user, generate the token, and then further calls in this project will be done using passing the token. So that will cover in the further tutorials. For now, I am going to simply generate the token and also secure all this endpoint that is there in my student controller, that is get student information, add student, delete student. So let's go ahead. So once this is done, let's focus on the user controller and add the functionality over here. So first thing I'm going to do is that we'll use the DB contest reference. So we say private application DB contest. This is a DB contest class underscore DB. Then I'm going to create private string as secret key. Now I'll tell you about the secret key. So we need to add a secret key in our application settings. So double click on that, and we will add a setting over here. Okay, so this will be a secret key. So for here I'm writing API setting, and so here I'm going to give a name called secret, and this is the secret key that we need to encrypt for JWT. Now this can be any value. This can be any value that you can mention it over here. So this is my key over here. We'll see how to use this. So once this is done, I'm going to go back to my user controller. Now here I'm going to create a constructor, CTOR tab, and this is my constructor. Now here I'm going to inject the DB contest class. So DB contest. So application DB contest. This is my DB, and here I'm going to pass configuration. Little bit sound. So now I'm going to provide this, and here my secret key which I mentioned over here, and fetch it from my app settings. So here configuration dot get value, and this will be string API settings, and this will be secret. So this will fetch that value that I created over there. So once that is done, I'm going to create a method now. So I'm going to label that HTTP post and assign a label that is user login. So I'm going to say async task. So here I'm going to, in order to make this login functionality, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a login object for response and request, which will actually pass in the username and password and the roles so that it can be validated, and in the return I'll pass those into the response class. So for that, what I'm going to do is that first create a class over here in my folder. I'm going to call this class as request and response. So this will be my user login response class. Which will actually have, in response I will have the user details. So basically I'll say public local user, this is my class name, and user details. So once I authenticate successfully, I will return this, my entire user details, and then I will have the string token, which will be returned if this login is successful. So this is my login response. Now similarly, we are going to create one more class called request login. So we are going to say user login request. So here we are going to pass the username and password. So we just need two things over here, that is string username and prop string password. So username password is this. We are going to pass username admin and password admin. In return, once we pass this request, in the response we will capture the entire user details, that will include even the role, ID, and name, and along with that we will successfully generate a token and we will pass it over here. We go back to our user control now. Now here we are going to create a method. So now we are going to say public async task. This is my user login response, and this will be login, and it will pass user login request object, and this is login details. I'll just extend this work area so that the code is visible. So in this method, what we are going to do is that we are going to create a user object, and here we are going to call the db context local user dot first or default, and we are going to authenticate the user username dot to lower class, we want to ensure, and this will be equals to, and this is login details dot user and also the password, and this will be login request login details dot password to lower, and this will be login details dot password dot to lower. So here we are authenticating the user request and password. Now once this is validated, we need to check whether it is null, and if it is null, we are going to return bad request, but now as of now we will say null, and this will be an identification that the login was failure. Now if the login is successful, now here is where we are going to create the token. Create JWT token and return. Okay, so now we are going to create the main code over here. So we will say var token handler equals to new JWT security token handler, then var key, and we are going to use encoding dot ascii dot get bytes and pass in the secret key that we fetched from the app setting. So this will convert into byte. Now once we have this in place, we are going to add the token description. Now the JWT token description in three parts: the header, which is a type of token, then we have the body, which has the claim, the role, and whatever value we need to pass, and finally it has a signing credential, which actually has the encryption mechanism, that the security algorithm that you need to pass. So let's go ahead and create those token as per the specification. So var token descriptor equals to new security token descriptor. So here we can see JWT, here you can see the security token descriptor, this one. Inside this we are going to say subject new claims identity. So in order to use here it is taking the full case, so what I'm going to do is add that using reference over here so that our code is short. Here you can say, I'll just remove this now, and I can say new claim identity, and inside that I'm going to say new claim, and this will have new claim, and this will have claim type. This should be name, and here I'm going to pass user details dot username, or I will prefer to pass the ID. So this is the claim type, and we are passing the name, and here login details. So here we have this user, right? So what we are going to do, that we will need to pass a unique ID. So we'll pass ID over here. So new claim type is name. So here I'm going to use this variable because the authentication is successful. So I will have the ID over here. So you can see my user variable will have the ID dot ID, yes it is there, and toString. And the second I'm going to pass is new claim, and here I'm going to pass claims type, and this will be role. As I mentioned, I have the user role defined, so that is there. Then I'm going to say expiry date. So I want to get this, you can set it. So for now I just added 1 day since we are doing the demo, but ideally your token should expire within 15 minutes or 10 minutes, or if you are a secure application it should expire in within seconds, so that you can decide. And then finally I'm going to say signing credentials, and this will be my new where I'm going to say new signing credentials. So this will be new new symmetrical security. Here you can see security key. Here I'm going to pass the key that I had extracted over here, right over here, and then I'm going to pass the type of encryption. So I'm just going to say comma security algorithm, and I'm going to select HMAC 256 signature. So this is the entire structure. So my code is ready. I'm going to put a breakpoint. So this is what, so I just zoomed and see, this is the code that exactly generates a JWT token, where you are actually creating a descriptor. First of all, you are fetching the key. So there's a key is defined over here. So this is my key and this is my value, where you can change as per your requirement. Then I'm converting that into bytes. Once that is converted, so this is the entire code block where actually I'm creating the JWT token, which is as a header, which has a claim, where I'm passing the name and the role. In the name I'm passing the ID, which is unique ID, and the role, the user role that I have it in my table, and then the expiry date, and finally the type of algorithm. So this is how the token is created. So now once token is successfully created, I'm going to write the token and pass it in the response object. So where token, and this is my token handler that I've created above. So this is a token handler right over here, and this will say create token, and this is pass the entire descriptor. It's passing the entire description over here to create the token. So once the token is created, I'm going to say user login response, user login response, and here in my user login response, I'm going to say user response login response. Let me have a smaller variable, login response, and this will be my new user login response. And here I'm going to pass token, which will be token handler, this one, token handler dot write token, and the token that, and second is I'm going to also pass the user details that is defined in my login response. If you go to my class login response, here I have user details, so I'm going to pass the entire user details. So this will be my user variable. Fine. So this is how I return back the token, create and return back the token to the user response method. So once that is done, I'm going to say simply return login response. So sorry, login response. Okay, which is right over here. So this completes my code, which generates the JWT token and returns back to the calling method. Fine. So now our login is ready. What we are going to do is that in order to test it, we will run this application. Okay, we will and then call this user controller, which is user login. So let's do that. So our Swagger should have this method. So here you can see our Swagger has this user now controller, and there is a post over here. I'm going to say try out, and I'm going to say admin, because that is how I have defined the user, and the password is also admin. Let's execute it. Once you click on execute, it should come back over here. So now you can see the user was authenticated successfully. I'll just move back over here. So here you can see the login details as the username and password that I had entered. It got successfully validated, and we got the response. We have the details: Robert, role, admin, username and password, and even the ID. So this was successful. We were able to log in successfully. Then here we are creating the token. Now here it is fetching. This is a secret key from the configuration, and it converted that into byte. Here you can see array, byte array. Now here we are actually creating, passing the ID and then the role and mechanism, and the token descriptor now as all these values. Finally we are going to create the token. So here the token got successfully created. So this is our JWT token that we successfully created it. So here you can see, as I told you, there is an header, there is a claim, and then there is the signature, that everything is out over here. And finally we write this token, and then you can see in the response we have the token now. So this is a token. I'll just show it in the text format. So this is a token, header, payload, and the signature. I hope you guys got this. So this is how the token looks. This is a header, this is our payload, and then this is our signature, and the token is ready. And then this we pass the token and along with the user details to the calling method. So now we have successfully created this, and you should be able to see this token in your Swagger also. So I click on that. Here you can see it is successfully fetched the information and also created a token. So our major work is created. Now we need to further configure our project, and we need to ensure that our project is using this validating every request with a proper token ID. Now before I add that authorization and part over here in the endpoints, let me first go ahead and see whether I'm able to call any of the APIs and whether it is fetching the records. Now I have created the token ID, but I have not associated that with the endpoints. How do we do that? So I'll cover that, but first let me just go ahead and fetch all the customer student information. Now if you click on execute, you see the student information is getting fetched without the token ID. So obviously we need to first bind the project and inform the project that you need to secure it, and you need to not accept any request if it is not passing a valid token. For that, the first thing we are going to do is that go to the controller, go to the student controller. Here we are going to tell the endpoints that you need to authorize. So we need to add a tag called authorize. So I'll just show it in for one method over here. So now authorize. So once I add the authorize, and we'll run the project again. And now when you click on the API students and click on try and execute, you see the error, no authentication was supplied. Now it is expecting a token to be passed, to be validated before fetching the information. So how do we do that? How do we tell the project that you need to authenticate, and this is the token ID, that bearer token ID that I'm going to pass while fetching the information. For that you need to configure that in your program files, and we will double click on the program files, and here first thing you need to do that there is a key called use authorization. Just about that, make a note about that order needs to be followed. First is authentication, so you say use authentication, and after that you say authorization. So first thing is that you add this user authentication. Second, you need to tell the project that you are going to use JWT bearer token. For that you need to add that builder service over here. So let's add that. Just before the var app builder.build, you need to first fetch the key. So we just say var key, which we had done it, builder.configuration.getValue string, and this will be API settings, and this will be secret. So first we are going to get the key from our app setting. Once this is done, I'm going to say builder.services.add authentication. Okay, and here I'm going to pass my lambda expression, and this will be having x.default authentication scheme. So first is default authenticate scheme, which will be JWT bearer defaults dot authentication scheme. Okay, now you need to just add this variable. Just click on and select this, and select the install package authentication JWT bearer. So just say fine and install it. So it's installed. Now we are going to use similar for scheme. So default authentication challenge. So there's default authentication channel default channel scheme, and this will also be JWT bearer defaults dot authentication. Skip. Once that is done, we need to say add JWT bearer. Here again I'm going to pass my lambda expression because it also has certain values to pass. The first is requires HTTP metadata, that is false. Then whether you want to save the token while request and response, I say yes. And then x.token validation parameters. So you can reduce this code by referring this in your using statement. And we're going to remove this part and pass this parameter. So these are a typical standard setting that you need to bind with to ensure that your API is getting validated. This is validate issuer signing key, then issuer signing key equals to new symmetric key security key, and here I'm going to say encoding dot ASCII and this is get bytes. I'm going to pass the key parameter that I have actually set over here, and after that validate issuer is false and validate audience is set as false. Then we close this code. So this is the setting that I have actually done to bind the project and inform the project that this is how you need to set expectation for any API that is called that I'm going to use the key and the JWT bearer token, and once you authenticate then only you fetch the records or do the further operations. So once this is in place, let's go ahead, and since we have also tagged this as authorize, okay, you can also set the roles over here. I'll show you how to do that. So first let's keep a breakpoint over here and run the project. Fine. So now I'm going to click on students, and if you like to get this, it will show unauthorized because I am still not passing the bearer token that I got generated over here. So how do I do that in the Swagger tool? Because here I don't have the option to enter the bearer JWT token. So for now I'll cover that in the next session. Now I'm going to use Postman. So I'm going to use this is a Postman, and I created a lot of videos, and there is a video how to use Postman, so you can refer that. For now I'm going to simply say new request over here, and this is a first I'm going to do is that it's a get request. So before we try to pull the record, I'm going to generate the token first. So here you can see my user information post. Yeah, so this is my user login. First I'm going to fetch this record. Just cancel this, click on user login, click on try, and here I'm going to pass admin and admin, click on execute, I'll remove the breakpoint. Here you can see the token is generated. I'm going to copy this token. Okay, so token is copied. Now I'll go to Postman, and the first thing I'll do is that I'll just go to headers, and here you can see there's authorization. Click on value, enter bearer, BERER, space, and paste the token. Okay, so I've added this bearer token now, and now I'm going to pass the URL. So what is my URL? URL is get students, right? So this is my URL. I'm going to copy this URL, go to Postman, Okay, so this is my URL students, and I've passed the bearer token as well. Now I click on send. Here you can see it is called the breakpoint. That means it is successfully authenticated, and it will also return the response. Here you can see the response is successfully fetched. Now what I'll do is that I'll just copy this entire mirror, I'll cut it, and now I'll just try to pass the request again without passing it to, and here you can see 401 unauthorized. So in fact I paste it and I just try to remove. In fact I paste it and fetch the record, and I'll go to the bearer and I just remove the E and try to send the request again I'll get unauthorized. So you see I have actually authenticated, added a secure layer, okay, and I'll making sure that anybody requesting for this API as this bearer token, and without this bearer token you will not be authorized to fetch the record. So this is the first part, like I've covered, like how do you pass this token, how do you generate a token, how do you mark the endpoints as authorized, so that you ensure that you have a proper token before you fetch the record. Plus you also configure your program.cs on making sure that your endpoints are secure, and without a proper JWT bearer token no request will be permitted. Now I had mentioned about passing even authorizing based on the role. So when you say authorize, it is not bind with any role, it is just simply expecting a JWT bearer token. What if you want to assign the role as well? So for example, you can very well restrict users based on the roles to delete the student. So we can do that, we'll show that right away. So as I mentioned, here I have added authorize. In order to also bind role with authorization, what you can do is that, for instance, if authorize, here you are authorizing the request to fetch all the students. So here you are not associated any role. That means every role will be authorized unless and until they have a valid JWT token. So here in this case, first thing you need to, in order to secure the endpoints, you need to add these tags everywhere. So here I'm going to add it in my get student details by ID. Then I'm going to authorize addition of students and also updation of students. But in case if I want to delete the student, I need to authorize the API request, but I need to pass the role. So I want to ensure that role. So here's the role, and I'm going to ensure that anybody who's admin will only have access to or will be able to delete this record. Now this is how you need to set up this key that will actually define that anybody who will come and execute this endpoint delete should first have a valid token, plus you should be a role admin. So this is how you can set these endpoints. Now today in this session I have actually covered how to secure an endpoint. Here you can see I have secured all the endpoints, and I've also showed you how to generate a JWT token and also set up your project for associating the endpoints with a JWT token right over here, and also showed you how to authorize based on the role. Now what we are going to do in the next tutorial is that, since our API is secure and we are now created an endpoint that is secure and nobody can access it without a proper valid token. Now in the next section, tutorial, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to show you how to consume your web API that is secure. That is how to securely consume your web API in your ASP.NET project, that is school management project. Now I'll also show you one more thing. I'm just simply going to ensure that both the projects are running now, and I'm going to see what is going to happen when I run the MVC project. I'm going to property, startup, and I'm going to multiple apply, and so now this is, now once I click on student, you see I'm getting an exception now, and obviously this exception is unauthorized. So in my next tutorial, what I'm going to do is that I'll show you how to consume and also handle exception. So this is not the way to handle the exception. So this is what we are going to learn, how to secure web API that is bind and secured by JWT token in your ASP.NET MVC application. So guys, I hope you like this video. I hope you understood how to implement JWT token in your web API, and please do subscribe my channel, and please do share my channel link with all your friends and family and colleagues, and help me to grow my channel so that it reaches the maximum of my developer community. Thank you so much for your time.